Summer of Love. You got tons of people coming over from all over the country, and San Francisco turns into a hellhole. You got 13-year-olds tripping on 1,000 milligrams of LSD, freaking getting melted, But that's what this the San Francisco crash pad here is all about, because they wanted to study the degenerate in their natural habitat. So Jolly West led a group of researchers to San Francisco's Haight-Ashbury district, man, far out, where they rented an apartment to study hippie culture during the last half of.
Which that's so funny to me. I'm sorry for interrupting, but they they didn't have a research facility. They just fucking rented an apartment to do this in, and a supposed academic research study.
It's got to be hip, man. And this is part of this kind of ties into the Project Chaos too, where they're which is a mass surveillance campaign, because they're trying to sniff out the anti-war people, and so this kind of ties into that too, because again, the whole point was, I wouldn't want to go to hang out in a medical office. I want to hang out at a cool hippie apartment. You feel me? So
it's true.
Get
a little high, crash on the couch, and let a couple of scientists poke me with some weird objects.
Dude, that's crazy, man. Because it's just a shame, because obviously we're not coming from like an anti-psychedelics angle.
No,
it's just like anything, right? It's like it's any technology, right? Like nuclear technology. It's like, oh, that could be sick if you use it to, like, you could power entire cities, you could power the whole world with nuclear. It could be so great, no pollution, blah blah blah. But then also it's like Hiroshima.
Yeah.
it's like doing acid is like, it's sort of like sex. It could either be like one of the best or one of the worst experiences of your entire life, depending on the consequences. You know what I mean? Like it's all about I don't know. Yeah, it's like if you consent to taking acid, then it can be fucking awesome. But if not, it can be terrifying. And so, like we just watched yesterday Clockwork Orange too, which like kind of, it was very eerie, like how much of that sort of ties in with the whole, because that's basically what happened to him. They're just, they take a guy who's like, well, this guy's a criminal. Let's send him off to this weird science facility and do a whole bunch of experiments on him and try to reform his brain. I guess the idea behind that was to, take a criminal person and then fuck them up mentally so much that they're unable to do crimes anymore, like physically unable. But
it's like a neural association between crime and just the feeling of wanting to die.
Yeah.
Which is like impending doom. So,
right.
I don't know if you've ever experienced that before, but just like, it's not fun, it's not fun.
But man, the whole thing, because the whole part, spoiler alert, Clockwork Orange, where he tries to jump out the window at the end, he's just like, because he keeps hearing the Beethoven, like that is what you could do. It's like an advanced torture technique, is use like a certain piece of music association with.
They use Limp Bizkit, bro. The U.S. government uses Limp Bizkit as torture methods.
Oh my God.
Put it on repeat. Yeah,
really?
They've confirmed that.
Rolling.
It's Break Stuff is the song they use. But
no way.
Yeah.
I feel like I heard somewhere they use the Barbie song as well.
Yeah.
Aqua.
Just because it's so.
Oh yeah, that
infuriating.
Would be very infuriating.
Well,
yes.
Yeah, exactly, and it's like
very demoralizing.
Audio input is one of the things that like associates with memory the most too. You hear a song and you're like, whoa, I'm like teleported back to somewhere.
Right.
And that's what happens in the movie too. Yeah. They ruin his favorite song. They ruin Beethoven because he has to watch all this fucked up stuff.
It also happens in another way towards the end of the movie, which, by the way, if you guys are concerned about spoilers, just stop watching the video. Anyway,
50-year-old movie.
Towards the end of the movie, the guy who helps him out, who's in the wheelchair, I forget his name.
I forgot
to.
But his wife was a victim of the main character, but he doesn't realize it until he's already helped this guy out off the street, pulled him into the bath, and the dude starts singing the same song that he was singing the night that the man suffered an attack on himself and his wife. Singing in the Rain, yeah. So
Yeah.
it's a weird
Right.
inverse like relationship with those audio triggers in that
Audio
movie.
cues,
Right, because
yeah.
it's like if you can imagine, I mean, everybody has probably a song that if a certain song comes on, it reminds them of like a terrible memory or whatever, or like
Yeah, I got a
and you're
few.
like turn this fucking, you're like skip this fucking song right now. But just imagine that times 1,000. Like just imagine that, but like your eyelids are held open and you're like being forced to watch
worst
like
thing you've ever
Nazi
seen.
World War II tapes and listen to Beethoven at the same time.
Kubrick's, I just gotta say, Kubrick is one of the best political satire writers, movie directors of all time, because it's such a dark but still comedic take on it. I remember this movie being so grim, but I was surprised at how much I kind of laughed and snarked at so much of it yesterday, because
It's funny.
it's so ridiculous that it's like, man, this is so fucked up, but this is how they got down, you know?
Hey, it doesn't help that half of it's in like a semi-made-up language. Which
Yeah, they're like
sounds goofy as hell.
ridiculously British.
But the whole
droogies.
But the whole point was, you know, we're going to reform these criminals one way or another by filling their brain full of chemicals and like bad mental associations. And then it just kind of works out where it's like, well, if they jump off a building after, then it's like problem solved, because then they're not clogging up,
Yeah.
you know, the prison system or whatever. That was kind of the logic to it, which is like probably pretty close to reality.
Yeah, truth be told.
And then so past that, so we got the hippie pad, which just leads on to everybody's favorite kooky fun guy,
Yeah.
Charles Manson.
Which, interestingly enough, happened also in Haight-Ashbury.
Yeah.
Or Haight-Ashbury. I
Yeah,
think.
hate Ashbury. Yeah,
San
it is.
Francisco's always been a degenerate hellhole.
yeah, for real. So the Haight-Ashbury Free Medical Clinic and MKUltra. So this dude Roger Smith. Who's Roger Smith?
So scroll up, because that's not the top.
Or
of the
down.
list.
Or down.
Or
That's
down.
right. Roger Smith.
So we got our boy Charles Manson, and then the Haight-Ashbury Free Medical Clinic with Roger Smith, David Smith, and Alan Rose. So Alan and, or not Alan, but Roger and David founded the Haight-Ashbury Free Medical Clinic together.
So what's
So Roger Smith was Charlie Manson's parole officer. Charlie Manson was a degenerate. He was kind of influential in the music scene.
It's like a cult leader.
And not yet, but because he'd already gone to prison and gotten out. And so he was the parole. His parole officer was Roger Smith. But Roger Smith was involved with MKUltra because he was getting his doctorate at Berkeley. So basically, Charlie Manson would keep getting in trouble, and Roger Smith founded this Haight-Ashbury Free Medical Clinic with Dave Smith here, and they would be observing people, studying people. But because he was already studying these things and he kept on hearing about Charlie Manson through people who would come into the clinic, he definitely wasn't going to turn Charlie Manson in for all the trouble he kept on getting into. Does that make sense?
He was
I
an
see.
opportunity for research.
I see.
Yeah.
So,
And so-
because Charles Manson had access to a lot of the acid that was
Because
going around.
it's because he was influential in the community, and
Right.
people were hearing about what he was up to over there. And so one of the other people who worked at the institute, named Alan Rose, down here on the bottom left here, he went to go live with Charlie Manson for a couple months and study them, and then they published a paper on him and stuff.
Yeah, the Group Marriage Commune, a case study. Yeah. So that was an academic paper that was released after Alan Rose spent, like 4 months, was it? Hanging out with them, studying them. And that's just kind of an interesting connection that they were so interested in Charles Manson that they had explicitly MKUltra subcontractors researching and observing him.
That's nuts, dude.
And apparently it was for good reason, because we all know what happened.
Helter Skelter.
Right. And yeah, I recommend anybody to listen to the Joe Rogan episode with this dude Tom O'Neill, who wrote this book Chaos, which is about this whole thing about the official narrative with Charles Manson and like what was really going down. So basically, let's see. So the Manson family murders.
That's
see.
more so just its own thing almost too. You know,
Yeah.
it's not like super duper, because that's just like a whole nother.
Yeah, it's a little more tangential. It's related in the sense that, you know, it's a lot of drugs, and we had MK operatives actually on scene, potentially influencing his activities. And
I think the idea,
making.
or like what I gathered from the Tom O'Neill thing, is that basically they kept letting Charles Manson off the hook so he could. It's like, and he was basically, you know, becoming sort of this like cult leader type of guy. And where was he learning all these techniques from? Into like how to hypnotize people and suggest people do stuff, because he was turning, you know, what were just average, weird, drugged out hippies into murderers, basically.
Yeah.
Through like just dosing them with hella acid and you know, basically MKUltraing them.
Yeah.
Into doing his bidding.
So,
or whatever.
I mean, it's never been expressly uncovered in that light, but I think the implication is strong enough for their, you know, for the connection to be made.
Well, again, tons of documents were destroyed once this stuff started to get wind to the public. They ordered tons of documents to be destroyed. So there is a lot about this stuff that they don't know. I even saw like a rebuttal from the CIA being like, Tom O'Neill doesn't know shit. Tom O'Neill can't prove shit. And it was hella funny because they were like, Tom O'Neill, it is weird, Tom O'Neill. I don't know how Charlie Manson did that, but you don't know shit. So, like,
so if they're concerned enough to make an address or response, it's like it's clear that there's more to it than what they say.
Yeah.
Right.
So,
you guys ever listen to Charles Manson's music?
It's not very good. Yeah, it's not very good.
No.
It's just like pretty mid, like 60s, like hippie music. It's kind of funny.
Oh, God. Poor guy.
But what was I going to say? So, okay, so the official kind of story of what Charles Manson, I guess, was trying to do, he was like trying to start a race war, basically.
Yeah.
He's trying to trigger like a revolution by like, I don't know exactly, you know, he was like ordering people to get murdered, basically.
So this is interesting. Obviously, the goal of Project Artichoke was to see if we could, you know, get somebody to commit an assassination without having, you know, previous knowledge that they were going to do that through subliminal triggers. So I think a lot of that knowledge made its way down the line over the, you know, the following decade into the Manson family hierarchy. And it's like, what better way to create division than use all of the psychological manipulation and drug abuse techniques they've learned to create a literal race war, like what is one of the oldest divisive methods that exists in history. So I don't know, political control or
because this is like
counterintelligence.
And this is like when the Black Panthers were like kind of like you know, very like influential during that time. And so in Charles Manson's insane mental state,
it was just a very contentious time in the whole, you know, in terms of that in general. So, you know,
but basically his whole plan with like his little cult, like his family, whatever you want to call it, is that basically while this like race war was popping off, while this revolution was popping off, he would be hiding basically in some kind of bunker or just like away from society while like everybody kills each other or whatever. And then basically all the Mansonites or whatever you want to call them would come out and basically just take over, you know, against all the other inferior races, whatever, you know.
The cockroaches emerge from their hole.
Yeah, no, it's
crazy,
like
bro.
it's a crazy.
That's a whole episode in itself,
yeah.
honestly, because that shit's crazy, bro. Because that reminds me a lot of like Aum Shinrikyo too, but it's like it's the same shit, you know. Honestly,
what the hell is
that's
that?
the Japanese fucking Manson cult, basically, bro. Like Aum Shinrikyo,
yeah.
and he was like, same thing. Use hella psychedelics, and he was like, it was like a mix of like yoga. It's like Hindu yoga, Christianity, Buddhism, but he was just super tripped out. And again, he was like, oh, we're gonna like start a revolution. There's gonna be like nuclear war, and so we need to get political power. And they ran for the party office and stuff, and they ended up committing some domestic terrorism too over there. Jesus. And so these guys, you know, these are not the, you know, Manson cult's just as dangerous, just as scary, but imagine how much worse it could have gotten, you know.
Yeah.
Is because